When I'm introducing a podcast, I often feel like I'm saying something like, hey, this one was a really interesting one, or pay attention to this one. This is really great. Honestly, I've really enjoyed the guests that we've had here on the podcast, on the Trades podcast. In introducing Chris DeCock, I'd like to just point out a few things. First of all, we had a ton of audio issues near the beginning of this, and it actually delayed the first interview that I had with him. So we actually ended up having to cut it short. So what you're going to do is you're going to hear two interviews right now. The first one is fairly short. The second one is a little bit longer. We did figure it out. You'll hear a touch of the problems in the first minute or so, but I think we figured out most of the things really quickly here. So no need to worry. The audio is pretty good. Chris has been using traits a lot. And you'll hear him talk about various personality traits that he's looking for in his business. He will refer to them a lot. So if you are new to traits, if you don't understand them very well, maybe send me a message or something, or listen to some of the past podcasts with Mike Morrow. He is the owner of Concord Consulting that produces traits, and he answers a lot of those questions on his interviews with me. Another thing you'll notice with Chris is that his pace is very fast. He is somebody who, if you think about that trait when it comes to pace, he is on the left-hand side, significantly on the left-hand side. He is able to respond to things quickly. You can hear that in his voice and how quickly he talks. You can see it in him and what he takes on. So what I'm going to maybe point out is that he loves complexity, and this actually works really well for him. He's in the restaurant industry. To me, that's insane. Anyone who's in the restaurant industry needs some kind of mental institution help every once in a while. He's amazing that he does so well in this. I have a lot of respect for anyone in that industry. It's also employee owned. He owns a few businesses, has been dealing with COVID in the restaurant industry and coming through it fairly well. So his life is full of complexity. He handles it really well, and it'll be a really fun listen. I will maybe do a really quick intro to the second half of this interview when we get there. Enjoy. Another interview. This one's going to have to be a short one because we've been messing around with some things and schedules. I'm here with Chris DeCock. Chris, thank you so much for doing this. It's cool to get to know so many different entrepreneurs in so many different industries. You are in an industry that terrifies me. You are in the restaurant business. And I mean, I think I'm a bit of a business person. To me, the restaurant industry is just on a different level. So maybe introduce yourself a little bit and explain your industry and what you're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I belong to a business group called EO, which is an entrepreneurs organization, and we have different forums within it. In my forum, we have 10 different guys from different business groups, and so I can't have similar businesses into it. And I'm in the restaurant business, and my other 9 guys are all like, "You're insane. Cannot believe this is the business that you do and how you do it." And reflecting and looking at what they do, I go, I'm insane. I don't know why I chose this as my career. But, it was just something that I done from a young guy. When I was 15, I started bussing tables, washing dishes, and I kind of stayed in it. And I went to university and I got a couple of degrees. And I thought I was going to be an engineer. I was going in a completely different direction. And but I'd always worked in the hospitality industry. And through a twist of fate, I ended up deciding that I didn't want to go down the sciences, math route, and I got into business. And so I worked for a corporate company for 3 years. Sobeys, actually, they trained me. I worked in the corporate office, helped open stores, helped develop programs, doing a number of things. And then I got an opportunity that was a crazy life-changing thing, where the largest independent retailer of Sobeys, John Radistitz, came and approached me and said, "Hey, we're doing this project. Would you like to come on board and develop a pub concept for us?" And that's kind of what started. And it started with one pub, and we grew it to 11, and then we grew another brand in 2018 called Greta, and now we've got some restaurants, and then just other kind of branched off into all different areas of business and entrepreneurship.
And there are so many things, even that what you're saying, that I want to pick apart and ask you questions about. I'll try to stay focused for this because I realize that this is a little bit shorter as far as this interview goes. I want to cover two specific questions from our conversations before. One is the question of talent. So COVID, I think it was your statement when we talked before, you said COVID killed talent. So maybe just describe that a little bit, as well as what you guys have done to develop within.
Yeah, so COVID was a really difficult time for a lot of businesses. Some it was amazing. Again, I've got an interesting reference because I can look at my business group that I'm part of, and what was fascinating is that we're everyone. So you look at 10 different people with 10 different businesses and different industries because they cannot compete or the group doesn't work. And through COVID, 6 out of 10 had their best years of their lives. Two of them were neutral. They weren't up, they weren't down, and two got devastated. We were one of the two that got devastated. And so it was interesting because in the six that were really strong, they were actually taking a lot of our talent out of our industry because really everybody knew with COVID and social distancing, anybody going out to eat or hospitality was just decimated. And so we had to lay everybody off. There was really about a year to almost 2 years gap. And with uncertainty and people needing to work, and yeah, sure, there was government support to help them, but a lot of people left the industry and they went to other industries. And so for some of those people that were in not affected industries and were booming, there was this unbelievable influx of talent that was coming from affected industries. And all of a sudden, we had this massive gap. And that gap still persists today, years later, because what happened is that we develop a ton of our talent from within. So we grow, especially for our organization. I would say of all my senior leadership, 80% of them were developed from within. They started as a junior manager, grew all the way up. Very few, and I would say all of my senior guys, all of them were from that. There's nobody in my senior group that I had hired from outside and joined in a senior position. I tried it a few times in my 20-year career. It hasn't worked out great, or it's worked out well for a few years, and then it was, you know what, I think maybe it's time to transition. But the ones that have stayed with us, and so because of that, we had this big gap where we lost development. So not only did we lose people from other industries, but we also had a 2 year gap of developing people. So it's this twofold impact that we're really having in our industry. And it's not just us, it's across the board in our industry. It's a pretty big challenge.
The question I want to ask specifically about that, Chris, is what are you looking for when you find somebody, or when you're looking for a leader, or you're looking to develop somebody? What are you looking for in that person? What is your methodology right now?
Yeah, so to us, it's really culture. It's the person, and so we can develop them and we can grow them, but you can't teach somebody to, like, if they're not an assertive person and you want to put them in an assertive role, they're just not. That doesn't mean they can't do it. And I always say that they can do it, but if they're not happy doing it, ultimately that's going to be a fail. They're going to get to a point where they're not happy. And we've used OPP a number of times. I've been using it for years and years and years. I've been using it for 15 years now, I think, and one of the first guys I think in our industry to start using it. And I call it my sort of happy sad thing. And it's interesting because there's so many different aspects to people. And for us though, because we're such a social environment and culture is really important, and the way the team works together, because nothing happens in our industry, in our business, customer facing, without teamwork. You need to rely on a bartender, you need to rely on a host, you need to rely on the kitchen. This is an incredible amount of teamwork that makes everything happen. To the guests, they might only have one point of contact, but the point of contact throughout it. And so if you don't have that cohesiveness, it's really difficult. So you can train them the skills, but what you can't train them is how to be social or how to be certain things. And so for us, we've really looked at that aspect as we build out our teams. But I've also found that it's been an amazing development tool because you can have open conversations with people and say, listen, here's kind of what we're seeing. Here's the job description. is this something that you would actually be comfortable doing? And I've even had so far where a fella has, I ran into him the other day and it was hilarious. His name is Jordan Dugas. Jordan Dugas worked with us for 8 years. So we started as a bartender, developed without, and wanted to become a GM. And it was interesting. I looked at his profile and I was like, you're basically unemployable. And we joked about it. And I was very transparent. We talked about it. And he said, well, I really want to be a GM. And I said, I don't think you'll be happy being a GM. I think you can do it, but I don't know if you're going to be very happy being it. And he said, well, I'd like to give it a shot. And I said, well, you know what? Okay, let's do it. But we're going to have check-ins in order to talk about this. And so he went in and sure enough, he wasn't very happy doing it. And so, but he was good at it. And there was a big difference. And ultimately, if you're good at it and you're not happy, then eventually your performance starts to drop. So those were happening. So we had conversations. And as I said, I just ran into him. And what did he transition into? He transitioned into a lawyer, which is an interesting transition from here. And he's super happy, super successful, and great. And so, it's that classic example of right person, wrong job. And so when we start to develop our teams and looking at our teams, it's certainly something that we're aware of. And as we develop people and help them, again, I always people get very upset and they look at it and say, "Oh, you're saying I can't do this," and I'm not saying you can't do it. What I'm saying is that you may not be happy long term, and ultimately, that's really what we looked at. And so things that we look at within is that is for our frontline people, we need them to be social. I can tell you everybody in ours, that social line is critical. If they're below, it just has never worked out because we are customer forward facing and you need to like to be around people. So I think using the foundation of that as we develop management and talent, it's a little bit different. They don't need to be as crazy social, but there definitely needs to be on the right side of the line. But there's where all of a sudden now their detail orientation becomes important. Their pace becomes important as well as their assertiveness, their ability to make decisions, their ability to be able to be in there to direct the team when things go sideways. Are they comfortable taking that pressure? And these are all things that ultimately, if it keeps happening, you're not. We're a very fast-paced industry. Things change all the time. You walk here, all of a sudden, the smoke alarm goes off, and now you got to go deal with that. Customer faints, and now you got to go deal with the customer. And so these things are ever changing, very unpredictable. And there's certain types of people that really thrive in that and enjoy it, and there's others that don't.
That makes so much sense to me. So I worked in a restaurant for a very short period of time, about a year, so as a host. And this is when I was younger, 18, 19 years old. And my guess is that you guys go through just so many people that in some ways you can now kind of cherry pick, find those people that are going to be ideal for your business, and then encourage them to grow with you. Once you find those right people, Chris, what are you doing to help them through the process? Because my guess is that the people who, like you said, are going to be great as managers or higher up in the organization in some way, they're not ideal on the frontline staff, as you mentioned. So how do you find those people? How do you work with them, and how do you develop them?
Yeah, I would say that. So I would actually like counter that a bit and say that we've found that there are varying people that are really good on the floor. And I would say that they kind of fall into three buckets. And I won't go into bothering, but it's someone that's more assertive, someone that's more like detailed, and somebody that is really. But all of them are very social. They have a different approach and style to the way. And because we have different times of our business, you would have a bartender might have a different profile than a day server for lunch. Day lunch is very functional. It's about going in and going like, okay, we need to do this, this, and this. The customer doesn't need to talk as much. They want to get their food, they want to have a conversation with their meeting, and they want to get out. Night bartender, people are sitting at the wood, they want to chat, they want to have it's a different service cycle. And so I would say that it's important in our leadership that they still have an understanding and can resonate in that customer service side. Where they differentiate are on the other aspects around that assertiveness and leadership. So I think from a customer service standpoint, that profile needs to be same. But when it comes to leadership, which are different characteristics within it, those are the delta. But you can be a very, very good server, bartender, etc., or even line cook. I mean, one of my best guys in my organization right now started out as a chef, and that's very unusual because most of them are low social, high detail. Whereas for him, he's got a bit more of an entrepreneurial style to him. He's got social ability. He's very assertive, and he's just thriving. So we moved him to the front of the house, and I said to him, I said, I remember his conversation. He came out of Lethbridge and really, really talented young guy. I mean, at 22, he was the chef. By 26, he had trained more people in being Red Seal chefs in our organization than every chef combined. Just this absolutely, but he'd hit a blockade in our organization where we couldn't grow him anymore. And we're like, okay, what are we going to do with him? And so I had a conversation with him and said, listen, I need you to bring you to the front of house. I need to get you into a more leadership role so you could lead leaders. Because what happened is he was really talented where he was, but he was only leading some, not other leaders. So he wasn't leading other chefs. So ultimately he wanted to be an executive chef, but where he lacked is he missed this whole gap on leadership, not on subordinates, because it's very different having a bunch of people that you've hired and trained and work underneath you versus going in and taking over a bunch of people who are leaders of other people, because it takes different skills. And he didn't have that, and we needed to develop it. So I said, come over, let's move you to the front of house where you can now have a senior management team, a bigger sort of organization. And he did that, and ultimately he chose not to go back to the back of the house, and grow on that other side. And now he's our operations guy on our Greta brand, and he oversees a number of aspects of the whole brand itself. And he's thriving immensely. And that was all using kind of who he was, what he was enjoying doing, and then going from there. I'd be remiss if I didn't say one thing, and that is that one big learning about all this is it does not tell you somebody's work ethic, and it doesn't tell you their values. And it's a really important comment because those are things that are outside. And so we will often look, and we will not solely go off of a profile, will not solely, there needs to be, because you can have a perfect profile, but they have no experience, or they don't have work ethic, or they might be a thief. You don't know. And so those are aspects that you need to, I mean, the interview process is still important. The development process of check-ins, accountability, work accountability, those are all incredibly important. It's a multitude of tools that get you there. And so it's not just one aspect of it. And one of the things with a guy like Taylor, who I talked about is the executive chef, then went in the front of house, for him, he just has an incredible work ethic. He's very bright. Add on top of that the right sort of happy, sad profile. You're cooking with gas, and it's an amazing what you can see these people excel.
It is fascinating even to see your pace as you speak, Chris, because you speak at a faster pace than so many other people. I'm going to let you go. I know that you're tight for time here. I'm going to reach out to you sometime soon, and we will book in another meeting or something where I can pull some of these things apart, because you've given an enormous amount of information and value in a very short period of time. So I'll pull that apart, and then I'll connect with you in the next couple of weeks here. Okay. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yep. Thanks.
That was the end of interview number 1. What I'd encourage you to do, just as a little bit of a transition before you get ready for the next one, is just think about some of the things that Chris was talking about. So the one thing that really stood out to me is there's a difference between saying you can do this versus saying, you can't do this, versus saying this won't fulfill you. You won't enjoy doing this. We've touched on this in a number of podcast episodes, and I just wanted to reiterate that. I find that such a phenomenal way of repositioning, restructuring the way we communicate with somebody. Chris talks about how he'll give somebody a try, but if it doesn't work as he doesn't think it might work at times, then there's a way to go back. And that's something that we talked about last time with Carmel, and how to give people chances at something and then allow them to take a step back. If we are dead set on, hey, I don't think this person is a fit, but they're really pushing for it. If we choose to put them in a position, we need to have a backup plan there. And I really like that Chris prepares all of his employees all the time for everything that's going on. Without further ado, let's jump into the second half here. Okay, that was a much shorter break than I thought. I thought it would be a couple weeks before I got to interview you again, Chris, but this is fantastic that you were willing to give me some more of your time. Last time, and people have just have heard this, but last time we talked a lot about employees and what you're looking for in employees and what you look for as potential leaders and employees. This time, what I'd like to do is just explore a couple of ideas that we've talked about really briefly. One is you are employee owned. What does that mean? What is your structure, and what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of that for your business?
Yeah, so yeah, we're employee owned. So it's interesting because we're um, a um liquor liability type business. Not all of them, because we're multiple businesses, but the one that started that kind of grew it all, which was Hudson's, it's a pub concept. So we do a lot of food. We definitely have like a restaurant component, but there is a higher than a restaurant liquor component. So with that, there's liability. And so because of that, we have each individual store is its own entity. So we operate in a very unique way because if you went and worked for, let's say, Sobeys, and they're all owned under one parent company, it's pretty simple, but it also makes it difficult to be an owner operator or buy into it because it's this huge company. Now, that being said, sometimes it's easier because they can carve off a piece. So for us, um, that was one of the things that was unique where we could have people own part of one store, or own parts of individual stores, or can own parts of this brand and not that brand. And so that's kind of how it started. What started out, ironically, actually, is myself, because when we started our organization, we just had one unit. And I came on board to be the operations guy, and I was effectively the owner operator that was operating it. But then my partner, he, was on the marketing and the sort of brand side, and then my other partner was on the finance, counting the money side. And then as we grew to our second location, third location, started bringing on other people to work within us. And then on top of that, we started bringing in senior leadership. So as an umbrella company, which we call Hudson's Hospitality, that one in that company, which services all these individual companies, that we started an HR director, we started a marketing director, and over a certain amount of time, we started letting these people buy in, and they would be able to be part of it. And when I say buy in, the way that we work is I always believe it's sort of pay to play. We're an entrepreneurial style place, and nothing shows commitment or that you're really into it than actually putting your money where your mouth is. It is not that we need the money, it's more of a symbol. And so it's not like we're going out and selling this and raising funds because we need to do it that way. They get a very, very lucrative, good return on investment style deal where it would be very much a preferential treatment. And so we have all these people that come in. And so for us, it really created a unique environment, one that is different than a lot of places. And you asked me the question around what are some of the strengths and weaknesses. One of the strengths with it would be, for example, when COVID happened, because we had such a strong owner operated group, everybody was bought in. So when we looked and said, well, we're not sure where things are going, we're all going to have to just work for effectively free or until we know where we land, everybody does that. And there really is a sense of camaraderie where everybody's together. Where the disadvantages lie is that everybody is not on the same path within their life and what they right. So when we first did it, because 20 years later we've learned a lot, the first round, if you would be, of employee owned people, you expect that all of them are going to be here 20 years later, and that's not the case. We have some that are, but lots of them have moved on. And I think in the early days we did not create a very good transition model or strategy around that, whereas today we have a much better, cleaner way for people to come into the organization, to sell out of the organization, or potentially to stay, depending on what level of position they were in. And so we now do have people that turn over. Like I would say White Avenue, Hudson's, for example, it's been in our brand for over 20 years. And we have had, in terms of owner operators of that, five different people in that 20 years sort of transition in and out. And of that, um, Two of those are still partners in it, even though they don't operate in the business anymore. But they had worked, both of those gentlemen worked with us for over a decade in different roles, and we felt that the legacy of keeping them as partners was a good thing for everybody.
Okay. When you talk about this owner operator model and buy-in, you're talking about culture, which you talked about a little bit last time. How do you handle, you're just talking about transitions, how do you handle transition in the hospitality businesses where people age out fairly quickly? What is your strategy there?
So it's changed. I mean, at the beginning, when I was young, I just, you think, oh, everybody's just, we're all just going to grow old together, and you don't realize the realities of it. And now, very much transparent in our conversations. So when people join, we actually talk about that we're a transitional style business, that you're probably not retiring with us, that you're going to have, and really what I say is, hey, we're looking to provide three things for you, with during your time when you're here. Number one is everybody's got to make some money, so you're going to make some money. Number two is that you will learn something. So from when you started to when you leave, you will learn something, and that you will have tools that you can take into other aspects of your life and career. And the third is that you will have lasting relationships that you've created. And I think for the most part, we've lived up to that. We look at sort of what we call the alumni and people that are there. Like, we're still very close with them. I'm going to one of the ladies who worked with us. Day one at Hudson's, White. Carly Anderson. She started as a bartender, then had her own sort of side, then came on, helped with a little bit of shift managing, and then started as an assistant marketing person, worked her way up to a director of marketing, and now she is left our organization, gone to another, and she's had two promotions in that next, and she's got a huge budget that she works under. She still is a partner in a number of our stores, and I'm going to her big birthday bash in a couple of weeks here. Like, we're still friends, and I think it's great because she goes out and there's still value to our organization because we can talk about marketing. What are you doing with some of your digital strategy? She's in a different industry. She's in the car business now, and doing extremely well. And so, I think we ticked all the boxes. It was, she made some money. She learned a lot while she was here, and we have some great lasting relationships.
Excellent. When you talk about, again, this aging out quickly and how you do that, you talk about growing old together, and you had a smile when you said that. Share more about that. You talked about originally wanting to grow old together and going, okay, that didn't work out exactly that. But what do you mean when you talk about the leadership team growing old together?
Yeah, I think that, we've been fortunate that we've grown in size enough that we've been able to keep, some of the people that are getting older. And when we talk older, and it's funny because some people listening to this are gonna roll around and go, "What are you talking about?" But the reality is, if you're going to be working on the floor, customer facing, in kind of a pub, bit more youthful environment, once you start hitting your mid 40s, that's you're starting to become like, it's definitely, it's your clientele, your connection, even your staff that you're managing, they're all just way younger. The average age of our frontline staff is going to be in their early 20s. So when you've got a 20-year gap between where you are and where they are, that can be challenging. Now, as the organization grew, there was district manager roles, there was head office roles, there was VP roles, there was things like that. So now you've got an age that you can expand to. You can do that into your early 50s, because you're now dealing with GMs that are in their 30s, 40s, and you're not dealing directly. But it does become a challenge for somebody who's in their mid 40s, always dealing with frontline, 20 something year olds, on and off. And then the customer base is the same thing. And then on top of that, the shift work. Because we are open so often, there is this shift change. And for people who are now have families, who are more working on a 9 to 5 schedule, these things become really difficult. And for women who want to have kids, we're not the same as being an accounting firm where someone just takes over your book of business and says, okay, you've gone on leave, away you go. It's when you've got someone leave as a general manager, that's running the whole store. You're not finding an interim 10-month person, and you just don't see that. So maternity leaves and things like that become much more difficult in terms of doing it. And again, we've done it, we've made it work, but it's really becomes difficult. And then long term, ultimately, lots of people, and especially on the maternity side, it's interesting because of the economics of the world. Once once a lot of people in our team, they have one child, it works, but when they have two children, economics almost dictate for them that they're like it's more expensive for them to to put up healthcare or childcare than it is for them to actually go work. And so what we find is we lose a lot of them there, and then there's a gap for about 4 years, and when they come back, they're just not interested in that shift work and that, and so we don't see them come back. And to that point, we've never had a person yet out of probably the 20 years had over 10,000 employees come through the door. We've never had anybody after having two kids come back to our industry. So, that's saying. So there's a number of things that are happening where you can age out. And we used to look at this as a bad thing. It's not. We provide some amazing skills that can help people in their future careers. And I can just go through so many of them. Like I just ran into a couple of guys, both of them that were previous GMs. One of them is now a very successful lawyer. He's been doing it for a very short period of time. I think Dugas is about 5 years into it, and he's almost made partner. The other guy is in the finance world and insurance world. Just the skills and the connections and learning how to interact with people, work in high-paced environments, work ethic. There's a lot of transferable skills. And so rather than look at our industry, some people used to always say, I'm going to wait to get my real job. And now it's like, no, no, this is a real job. It's actually a real job. And there's lots of really great things that you can do and learn. And then there are people like Jason Borley, who I expect he's worked with me for 21 years, and I expect him to still be with us for at least another 10 plus years, and may be one of those guys like me that he owns a tremendous amount of the company now because he's bought into every store, so he's including the Greta brands, so he's got a great portfolio there. And with that level of ownership, there's a nest egg there that you can ultimately then take and retire with when you get to a certain age. So there is an ability, but the funnel gets smaller as you get to the top in terms of how many people you could bring to sort of the retirement level.
Okay. There again, you're touching on so many topics that I'd love to probably sit with for a little while. One thing I'd like to touch on is strat planning or handling growth. What are some tips, tricks, thoughts, ideas, secrets on strat planning on this high turnover business, which would be, I guess, in some ways similar to a high growth business in that you're constantly hiring. What are some tips and tricks there?
Um, I mean, I think there's a lot there. I mean, we could have a whole session just on that. But I would say that uh, it's I know you hear it all the time, and you read all the books, and everyone says it, and they're saying it for a reason, and it's true. Is you really have to hire on values and on who the person is versus experience, and that like it is they need you. Yes, you need a certain level of experience, but the number one thing is that culturally, values wise, they really need to align with what you are as an organization. No matter how good their resume is, if they don't fit that, it just doesn't work. And it's a lot. And actually, ironically, the ones that can be high performers that are not. the right fit will actually do even more damage than somebody that comes in that's a low performer but isn't the right fit. Because the low performers you identify really quick and you're like, okay, you're just not working in here. But the high performers you keep around because you're like, but you don't realize the damage that they're doing within the organization until after. So I think for us, that would be one of the biggest focuses around is who they are as people. And again, not trying to plug the OPV. It's one of the reasons I do love it because it really helps with that sort of happy sad piece that says, okay, you know what? We know that the values aren't there, or we can't read the values, we can't read the work ethic, those things which are super important because those are part of the cultural stuff. But you're gonna know, okay, is this even going to be something they're going to enjoy doing? Because if they don't, it's all for naught at that point. So, and again, it's not that you can't do it; it's whether or not you're going to enjoy doing it. So, I would say that would be my number one big thing. And then on top of that is the next phase of that is just training from within, meaning that always make space for we will always make space for a good person, and we'll try and fit them into the organization. And it's really important for us to always have some redundancy. So we've had times where we're running a little bit higher on maybe some of our wage costs than we'd like to, but it's to create depth. And I would tell you that one of the competitive advantages any organization can have, regardless if it's ours or anyone else, is talent, talent, talent. It is the secret sauce that everybody knows and we talk about, but I don't think enough businesses or people really live by that. And some people get a little bit arrogant or complacent with the fact that people choose to work with them. And this is one of the key things now around millennials, Zetters is, and we talked about it last time about respect versus liked. The Xers, you could be respected, and the millennials, you need to be respected and liked, and same with the Zetters. So there's this combination now. And so when they choose to work with you and your culture, that is something to be very grateful for and continue to harness that. And it will pay back tenfold in terms of what they will do for you as an organization. So, because nothing moves unless you're in a new AI business or you're in something else like that, or computer run logistics. But even I would dare say with that, there are still some people that are supporting it that, people are really the backbone to any organization, and especially ours where we're customer forward facing.
Which begs another question in my mind, and that is how do you retain people in this business with high turnover, high transition? How do you retain people?
Well, the classic thing that's said, and it's the truest thing, is people leave managers, not organizations. And so, really, it's around your leadership. So, your leadership being great communicators, being organized, providing one of the simplest things to me that always blows me away is make sure everything works. Nothing worse than going to the blender and it doesn't work. You're going to go to the broiler and it doesn't work. And, the air conditioning is broken. These things just sort of set a standard that says, you don't care enough about your place to keep it at this. Why do you expect me to be at a certain way? So to me, those are real easy things to do. And so if you can check those boxes up, but it's amazing how many people don't do the easy things. But the easy things, just check them off. And then the hard things, which are the people, which are that's where your culture comes in. That's where your development comes in. And again, seek to understand to be understood. Talk to your staff, hear where they're coming from, what they need. And you know what? If it works for them and it works for you, it's a beautiful relationship. If it works for them and it doesn't work for you, it's not good. If it doesn't work for them and it works for you, it's not good. So by understanding what their needs are and aligning with that, you can do some really powerful things, and you can avoid a lot of issues by knowing that. So talking to your staff, training your staff, and people say it, but actually doing it.
Huge difference between saying it because it's preached everywhere. Managers, leadership, we get all this training, we talk about it a lot of it does come down to personality again and how people are wired, but legitimately I agree completely. If people don't leave, I think the quote was, people don't leave a job, they leave a manager. And that is so important. With that then, what are the maybe two or three biggest complaints that you hear when somebody is leaving regarding a manager?
It would go to that. A lot of it would just be that they weren't heard, that they weren't heard. I mean, ironically, in ours, I mean, something so simple as schedule. I said that I was supposed to be, these are the days I couldn't work, and I kept getting scheduled on those days. So to me, I think being heard would be one of the biggest. The second would be that they didn't, that they, outside of that, they didn't care for their manager, that there was a personality conflict. And I would say those are less in ours. There's times where I've had, over the years, we've had bad people like that have not worked out well. It's taken some time to figure it out sometimes, but you'll see it through our surveys and stuff. It'll come up about the manager. You're like, okay, there's something here. So I don't want to dismiss that. That is definitely something that happens even within our organization. I think it's just I like to believe we do a better job of identifying it, trying to coach them to see where their gaps are, and if we can't, then we move on and move with someone else. But I would say the other one that we would be is just opportunity. So there's an interesting thing around this next generation, a little bit in the millennials, but definitely in the Zeds. And what you're seeing with the Zeds is and you will hear them all. I want growth. I want growth. I want to be training. I want to be developed. I want to be do this. I would say a lot of them have unreasonable expectations for how fast and how quickly their growth and development would go. And I would say a number of them, more so, not as much in the frontline staff, because it's like, okay, I'm good at serving, I'm good at this, that. As long as your schedule is good and it still works within your, sort of means you're sticking around. But if you're within the management rungs, we definitely have a lot where they want to be promoted to the next level. We don't feel that they're ready for it. And then somebody else, because there is such an incredible labor shortage, they will get promoted from another organization to pull them over and put them into a role that we're not prepared to put in. And we get that a lot. It's funny, I had a call today about two of my guys in one of the cities that are both being offered one, two positions above where he's at right now, and the other guy one position above. And we've got a position for them. They're great, and we want them in our organization. They're just not ready yet, in our opinion. So that's, I think, another big sort of reason you lose. And so you have to make a decision at that point. Are you willing to promote them and put them in there and risk sort of failing the location, or is there a chance? And I would say sometimes we go, okay, let's give this a shot. It's not worth losing that person. But I would say that would be less frequent than is frequently. More often than not, we say, okay, well, you know what, sucks, because we did see something for this person in maybe a year and a half, but right now it's just not the right role, and away you go. The other thing I would say too is that I'll never stop somebody from a great opportunity. I'm excited for them, and if they're able to get something that's a step up or a growth even within our industry, and we don't have it available for them, 100% support them all day long to do it.
I've never heard a good manager say anything different than that, Chris. We should be excited about people and their opportunities and where they're going as well. We're up against the time. What would you do to brag on a couple of your locations? Any kind of marketing that you want to send out there right now?
I don't know. I like to think they stand up for themselves. I just, yeah. I mean, I would say if you're looking for a corporate something really different, fun, that is team building, that you don't really need to over engineer it, and we can take care of a lot of that. Any of our Gretas in any of the different cities, we're in Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, just a wonderful place to take your team, build some of that culture, especially in this more remote working world that we're in, where it's much more digital and you're seeing people on Zoom face to face, or not face to face in terms of person. Getting visceral with people in a really fun collaborative environment like Greta is just, I think, really great for culture and great for people. So there's my little point.
That's perfect. I'm going to put up a couple links in the show notes for people to see where they can get that information really quickly. Thank you for this, Chris. Appreciate your time. Enjoy your week here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
again, a ton of value with Chris, as with every guest so far. I've consistently been impressed with the quality of guests that we are having on this podcast. A couple things from what Chris was talking about. He talks about how pretty much everyone he hires for the floor is social on some level, that this is non-negotiable, that the back-end staff can be more detail-oriented and less social, but that the front-end staff for his business, for in his industry, he knows everyone needs to be social on some level. They will do better. It will fit them better. They will... everything's going to be happier. Customers are going to be happier. This is something that I love about traits. Once a hiring manager can understand how personalities fit roles, they can start almost seeing the matrix and look at people forever differently. I really get the feeling as I was speaking with Chris that when he interviews somebody, when he's talking to them, he's getting a feel for how social is this person, how detail-oriented is this person. And once we start to be able to pick up on those things, we make better hires. Now, again, the traits tool is an objective tool that helps people start with that. But I found that a lot of the people that we work with start getting a really good sense of this for themselves and understanding who people are fairly quickly. I found this for myself as well. As I learned how to use the tool better, I started seeing people around me in a different way and kind of going, okay, yeah, this person's more social. This person is much more assertive than the average person, or whatever that was. I asked Chris about handling transition, and he is fantastic at helping sell employment to his people. I like how he said, you're going to get three things from this. You're going to make money, you're going to gain tools, and you're going to have lasting relationships for the future. So much of the time, we set people up to fail because of a lack of communication, and managers especially, when there's a lack of communication, where there's trouble in that way, there's a problem in the end. He talked about this a little bit later on, right? He said the biggest complaint with managers, and I loved his quote. He said, basically, people leave managers, not organizations, and how important that is. But he said the biggest complaint is that I wasn't heard. I wasn't heard. If we are communicating well with our staff, if we're communicating well with the people around us in a business, in an organization, that makes all the difference in the world. And again, why we love traits so much is that it facilitates a lot of that communication, that we can look at something objectively. And rather than having an argument with somebody, like, I see you doing this, and the person saying, no, I really see myself doing this. If we can agree on some kind of floor where we say, hey, this is where you're at, or some baseline, I should say, then it makes communication so much easier in the end. Another thing he said is that talent is the greatest advantage any organization can have. I mean, this is complete common sense, right? All of us would agree with this. And yet it's also really profound, because while we will all say talent is a huge advantage to an organization, where I think people differ is that some people say it, but then don't hire as if it's true. And that's a mindset that we need to switch into as we think about this great asset, this great advantage that we can have as an organization. If we have the best talent around, we're going to do better. We're going to go outdo our competition consistently. Another thing that stood out, and maybe this is the one I'll close on, is that he emphasized values versus hiring for experience. So a focus on values, rather than hiring for experience, and how important that was. The cost for a wrong hire can be extreme. One, because we're taking the time and energy to train somebody. We're investing money to train somebody. There's the lost time and money that we have paid somebody to train up when they don't last. But also because of, and this is what Chris talked about, how much damage somebody can do in an organization. When somebody is causing grief in an organization, now it causes problems with more people. And now that cost can actually mushroom cloud a little bit. It can get huge. I also enjoyed when I asked about strat planning that Chris really went back to people again. He's just people all the time. He really focused on hiring the right people. And I just found that interesting that his strat plan, when he thinks about strategic planning, it's all about how do I focus on people. Obviously in his industry, that is an emphasis as well. Now, before I let you go, Chris talked about Greta Bar and how he's like, hey, if anyone wants to work in a really fun place, this is the place to do it. So this is what I'm going to do. I know that Hudson's pubs are also something that Chris is passionate about. It's another part of his business. He mentioned it in the podcast. So I'm going to put links to both of these sites, and specifically what I'm going to do is show the location. So explore the site, click on the link, explore the site. But yeah, if you're interested in joining the team, if you're interested in looking more into this, and simply working for somebody who takes so much time and energy, invests so much time and energy into the people that they are hiring, because not every business does that. That is a significant difference between those managers who truly are saying, hey, how do I invest in my people, versus, yeah, we want to do these things, but they pay things lip service. So yeah, look at the websites. You can start with where the locations are, see if you're close to something, and then explore the websites anyway. Bump up his websites a little bit. That never hurts anyone's business either. Enjoy your day, enjoy your week wherever this finds you, and I look forward to interviewing my next few guests here. We've got a few in the hopper right now, so we'll have consistent podcasts coming to you for quite a while. I've also got a guest coming. We're probably a while away from this, but that I'm very, very excited about it. I'll maybe throw out a few other teasers later on, but in the meantime, enjoy running your own business and taking care of the people around you.